Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everybody. So we're going to test some settings here really quick. For anyone wanting to know how to fix the stutter right away, go into graphics, display settings, make sure your frame rate is 120, not 240. That will make it smooth. 120 only for a 144 Hz monitor or 120 Hz monitor. So don't set it to 240, that messes up with the frame timing and will cause lots of stuttering. AMD recommends setting the frame rate target to your monitor refresh rate or less, so 120 for my 140, and they recommend VSync on. And then right now I will turn it to everything is maxed. Ray tracing, everything is ultra. And here is native 4K, 52 frames per second. And I don't understand this game engine. I mean, it looks pretty good, but I think Starfield looks even better in the worlds for the same frame rate. So it's using a lot of resources to produce this image. But they were at 51 FPS. And I can tell it's 51, it doesn't look the best. So this is the Forspoken demo for free for testing purposes. But we're at 50 right there. Let's go with something I might have an issue with, but let's try it. Native AA with frame gen on. So we were just at what, 53? And it doesn't work, see? Oh, and let me put the overlay on. Hopefully everybody can see the overlay now. But you can see there is definitely clearly a bug. We're only getting 37 FPS with native AA. Now if I turn frame gen on, off, it doesn't fix it. It says 41. With native AA is bugged in Forspoken demo. Yeah. It's not running correctly. Also, the micro stutter. Micro stutter is not showing up in tuning.
New York street smarts to make a quick buck around here.
And where would you fritter away your
Give me 1 second.
Who says fritter? Good question.
Oh, you need the new beta driver, the preview driver for micro stutter. I also redid my driver. I set it to the original. I tested the preview and then I went back to the original. So native AA is broken. So if you can't get it to work, at least in the Forspoken demo, it's broken. But they were at 36 FPS and now we're at 120. So there's 120 FPS and it's smooth, no judder. It feels like 120 FPS too. But here, I'll just walk around a little bit. The biggest thing for me is FSR 2.1, especially in like Cyberpunk. Oh, it shimmers so bad when you move around. But right this second, I do not see any shimmering on the whole screen.
Ugh.
So I think they upgraded, updated the upscaling.
It's definitely not the most welcoming of realms.
And to give a comparison, so right here we're looking at quality with frame generation on. If we leave there and turn everything off, when I press escape, you'll see it go from quality FSR to native. So get ready, 3, 2, 1. Quality, now it's native. Barely any difference between quality and native, which is good. That's what you want. Would I say that quality is better than native? I don't know. But right now this is the native image and we're going to have quality in 3, 2, 1. Some places do look smoother with it on. But like that tower in the distance, that will shimmer even on native. So I think it's the game engine. But here, right now, native
Something's
frame
there.
generation's
What
off.
should we do?
Could pretend we didn't notice.
Well, I don't know if you can see the very top of that tower. It does shimmer. It's like shimmering. So native is producing artifacts and shimmering. But does quality pick them up or does it get rid of them? I think it picks it up a little bit. Yeah, so that's an issue, but that's not a huge issue. And plus, here's the big thing. Whoops. But if you run towards something or away from something and it doesn't shimmer
Stay frosty. Got it.
and it's stable, I really like that. That is what I was hoping for FSR 3 and Cyberpunk. Because this, I could play like this. With other FSR, with all the shimmering and aliasing, I couldn't play that way. So here we're at 120. The only problem is you say, oh, well look at my FPS, it's 120 and it's nice and stable. I can play the whole game with quality, with frame gen. You could, but it might not be the best. Because if you get into a fight, your frame rates will drop. Before you apply frame generation, you always want to get 60 to 70 FPS. So right here it's 60 FPS is your max frame rate. I set that to 120. So with quality FSR, we're getting 75 FPS. Let's look at the same area here. 78, 79. That's wonderful. And that's what you want for frame generation. But now, if you do all your abilities, watch the frame rate, what happens.
Don't panic.
Stop making me panic.
See, we got down to 52 FPS. That can kind of mess you up a little bit for smoothness. 56, 53. So, it actually keeps record of this. So as soon as I press escape, it'll show me what's going on. So let me turn this back to 60, because when you enable frame generation, it turns it to 240. You do not want to use 240 if you have a 144 Hertz monitor. I see many people do that, then they get stuttering and it said FSR isn't good. You want to put it to 120 to keep it capped. If it said 144 here, I would recommend putting 144, but for some dumb reason, the game developers didn't put 144 in there. Just like Bethesda didn't put a field of view slider or have any HDR support in Starfield. Just, it's ridiculous. What the heck are these guys smoking? What are they doing? But anyways, sorry. Still feeling sick from the other days. Trying to get through it, so 120 FPS, you want that. So now back to the frame rate here. It says we got 58. But you do performance. Well, here, I'll keep frame generation off. We're going to go to performance and watch the frame rate. Instead of 58, it should be higher. Oh, I set the thing here. I set it down again. But this is frame generation off, native, no, performance FSR, and we're getting 90 FPS with all ultra settings. I mean, and this is playable too. I don't think it's too shimmery or too bad or too ugly to not play like this. Whereas performance on FSR 1, I couldn't stand quality, let alone, I really couldn't stand performance on like Cyberpunk and the other games like that. I mean, I prefer native. I like the sharpness. But that one area we had 53 in the beginning, right? Now we have 95. So this is performance FSR. I think it looks good, sharp. I don't see a whole bunch of trees and things shimmering. Looks good. I'm gonna do a pan around.
This amount of brokenness doesn't feel so bad.
Not for you, maybe. Normal human beings, on the other hand.
Hey, I am a normal human being, thank you very much.
I understand why people don't like this game though. I'll just say that, and that's all I'm gonna say. And then this is with it off. See, very little changes. So that's nice. But 50 frames per second. 50, 51. $49, $48. Yeah, so performance will take you from 51 FPS up to 97. So that's a bonus. Basically doubling your FPS. And then you can double your doubling by putting on frame generation. The only problem is they have more kinks to work out, I believe. Cause see, 240 performance, so now I should get 200 FPS almost. Oh, I have VSync on. Well, see, that's the thing. VSync's on. Okay, you think, wow, I'm at 144 hertz, 143, 144. So this should run perfectly fine, right? And it doesn't. It's stuttery. It's very stuttery. It doesn't feel smooth at all. And this is the issue I think Daniel Owen was having and others. But it's running at 144 FPS with VSync on. Why? See, that's the problem. And the only fix that I know is to put it to 120. Boom. There you go. Smooth as butter. Feels great. Looks great. Now you say, well, I just got about 90 to 100 FPS. And I'm turning frame generation on to get 20 FPS. Is that a good idea? Probably not. But here's the kicker. So let's say you... Oops. Let's say along that lines of thinking, you're like, well, I'll just play with performance. You know, I don't mind it. I'll keep frame generation off, play with performance, and run around here. Performance mode at 94 FPS. That should be good, right? Right.
Just thinking.
Well, let's try this, and I'll show you the problems. So we're at 92 right now. And if you don't mind it slowing down during combat, this doesn't matter. You can keep it on quality. Or at least balanced to help it out. But if you're fighting enemies, keep an eye on the frame rate right now.
Okay.
We're down to 81, 75, 70. 70 is probably the very minimum that you want your frames per second to go down while using frame generation. So if you're doing like crazy abilities and all these things, like right there, we're at 75 FPS.
Gotta keep moving. Time is money.
Yes, and money is...
So we got down to 70 FPS. That's the very lowest you want with frame gen. So while you think, oh, well, I'm running around in the game at 90, why should I enable frame generation for 30 FPS more? Well, you're not really running around. I mean, it's 100 right now, but in combat, you're going down to 70 or so. So that's the thing. If you want the smoothest game, it might not look good, and I'd recommend if you're exploring to just use quality. just use quality with frame gen on, and always make sure you're set to 120 once you turn on frame gen. Because if you turn frame gen off, look what happens. 60 or 120, right? So you think, oh, I'm at 120, I'm doing what Frosty Bud says. Why is my game stuttery? Well, what happens is you come and turn frame generation on. Now look what it turned to. 240. So it's either 60 or 120 at native, and then you turn on frame generation, and then it goes from 120 to 240. So there's where you want to do 120. So now, if you get into a fight, you know, you're at 120 FPS and you're fighting someone and doing all your abilities, and
Just breathe, will you?
now you maintain 120 FPS.
Not helping.
And changing settings seems to bug things out too. Oh, we're right there. That's what I was going to say. So look, right now we are at 103 FPS. That means our base frame rate is 50. That's bad. That's why if you want the game completely smooth, the entire game through all the fights, generally you want to put performance mode on and turn on AMD frame generation and set that to 120 Vsync on, and that will give you the best smoothness. And then when you do all of these abilities and craziness, you should maintain 120 even during intense fights.
I feel myself rusting.
Can you rust?
I'm not 100% certain, but better safe than sorry.
I'm sorry, I have the music playing. I thought I turned it down. Oh, I turned the wrong thing down. Oh. There we go. Sorry, everybody. But anyways, the other thing to do is test the settings. Like here's some shadows and stuff. I'm gonna put this to Vsync off, 120 on. What's our frame rate? 162, but we're only using 120 of them. So it can actually generate 40 more frames per second overhead, so that when we're fighting, it has that much overhead to help us. But at 160 frame rate, that means the game is running at roughly 80 or 90, and then it's frame generating up to 160, doubling it. But the other thing is you're at 160 here. Well, let's say you want to run quality. You don't really care for upscaling. You are super sensitive, even more than I am. You only want to run quality at the maximum resolution upscaling that you're willing to compromise on. And you want to run quality and on. Well, here you go. This is what you can do. So we already know that 160 FPS is enough to generate 120 during fights. So all you have to do is, now that you know that, we have to change our settings so that right now we get 160, just like performance mode. So instead of changing from quality to performance mode, we're going to lower settings so that quality equals performance mode. And then the way we can do that is first lower your ray tracing. What do we get? Are we at 160 yet? We're getting close. 146. Let's do some standards here. Shadow and clouds. And also look at the shadows that we're standing in. Like, look around and see the changes of the shadows. Is there a big difference? Not really? Well, then it doesn't matter. It's just a setting. If it doesn't make any visual difference, turn it down. There's no reason to have all these ultra, super epic ultra settings. And I liked Hardware Unbox's video. That was really funny. Hardware Unboxer, like, ultra settings are stupid, and then they did everything. And they've done Cyberpunk and Red Dead Redemption settings, and they're really good in their review. I disagree on a few points. I like to do maybe a high instead of a medium on some things. But, you know, overall, really good. But right now, pay attention to the shadows and everything, and you're going to see if ray trace shadows do anything. I didn't see really any change. I didn't see the shadows drastically change or anything. And already, we're almost at 153 frames per second. So while all this ray trace, this and that, you know, for me, I'd rather turn off that little bit of shadows. And I'll turn them even back on again. Tell me if you notice a huge difference. Worth, I don't know, 30 FPS it was? There, did you notice a difference? Oh, I didn't notice anything. So we're at 126. We turn off them ray trace shadows and ambient occlusion. Alright, in 3 seconds you're going to see the shadows and ambient occlusion ray tracing turned off. 3, 2, 1. Did you notice the difference? Nothing really. Barely anything. And we went from whatever I said, 126 up to 153. And nothing really changed. So that's how we can raise our frame rate so we can play the entire game on quality. We don't have to run balanced or performance. And I prefer that, and I recommend that to people, is use quality, get as close to 4K as possible, and then adjust your settings so that the whole game runs smooth at 120 or a base frame rate of 60 at all the time. And the best way to do that is run at least 70 during fights. A good rule of thumb for 60 FPS gaming is set your settings with your Vsync off so that most areas of the game you get 70 FPS. Then you'll always have enough overhead to maintain that 60 and keep it smooth. Well, I'm applying that to this. We want to have 120 with frame generation, and we're in a very low area. It's not very intense right here. You know, it's not very intense, so our frame rate's high. But then you start doing fighting. Let's see what the frame rate drops to. If it goes under 120, we have to lower more settings.
Woo! Woo!
Oh, look at that. 106, 116, 111, 112. So we need to lower a little bit more. We're at 109. So then you could do shadows. Whoops. Motion blur. I kind of want that off. And Fidelity FX, I don't know if that's any better or worse. Also, changing these things will lower your frame rate right now. Like if you look at the frame rate at the top right, it says 108. But watch if I turn all these lower. Now it says 122 instead of 108.
Them at least.
Not for you,
But now that I know what settings to do and to put it to 120 with Vsync on instead of 240, it does look better and smoother. Now Vsync's off and I can clearly tell it is. So Vsync will give you stuttering, and doing 240 max frame rate on a 144 Hz monitor will also give you stuttering. So Vsync on, 120 FPS max frame rate set, and that will fix the stuttering and be great.
Ugh, it's so damp here.
So I'm waiting for these spells to come back.
No limits, milady.
The best one is Crucible, because that'll really show you what's going on. But we're so close to the 160 and maintaining that. What happens if we turn all of this low? 3, 2, 1. We're going to look for changes. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it removes all the fog. And the clouds completely change. Now that's game changing. But look at the frame rate. 180. Passing our target. So you can say, well, what do I want? Do I want fog? There's fog. That puts us to 174. And we already established we want to run about 160 at all times. With frame generation on, you want 160 so that during fights through all areas of the game, you'll always be able to maintain 120 and be locked in at 120. And then I thought about it, well, why don't you just disable frame generation? You know, why don't we just disable it, run pure real frames? And you can do that. And you'll be running at 100 FPS right now. And you think, wow, I'm getting 100 FPS with quality FSR. It looks great, feels great, great. But then you do this.
There.
Now we're at 76, 62, 78. See, it's a little bit too low. And here, give me 1 second to change my overlay to track better. The tracking time. Here, I set it to half a second. Let's just go ham. I set it to track like every 1/10 of a second. That'll give us more. But as you can see, we hit 60 FPS almost at the very low during the peak of our ability craziness. Meaning, as long as we can maintain 60 throughout the entire game, we can maintain 120 and keep it smooth. So my job here is done. Now we can check the cloud quality versus fogs. What would you rather have? Would you rather have better clouds? We're at 98 or 99.
Just checking.
105. What does cloud do? 117. I don't even notice a difference. See, that's the other thing, is if they take up Arma Reforger. Arma Reforger does this same thing. They have all these settings, you turn them off, there's no difference. You literally cannot see any difference. So why even add them to the game? I don't know what these developers are doing, if they're bugs or glitches. But let's do high clouds. Alright, there's high clouds. Maybe it's different areas, but let's go to low clouds. What's our FPS first? 111, 110. Now let's go to low clouds. Let's see what changes. 3, 2, 1. High to low clouds. I didn't see any change. And our FPS went from what? 109 to 120. We're in quality mode. DLSS is, or frame generation is off.
Shall we make a move?
We're playing
You
110.
don't make moves. You just sit there being a prick.
We're playing at 100 FPS, quality mode, frame generation
Try
off.
not to get a foot stuck. You don't want to fall over.
And there I was thinking I'd love for that to happen.
I wouldn't put it past you.
But there's a 102. What happens if we turn off fidelity, super resolution? There we go. We got 72. So that's taking 72. And this is how I play Cyberpunk. Roughly in the 70s and 80s. Modified settings to just play 4K native resolution, FSR off, and this is how I play Cyberpunk. But I do wish it was more than 70 or 80. I wish it was closer to my monitor refresh rate at 140, 144. But yeah, this is smooth, native, 70 FPS 4K. But my thinking is, actually let me look for stutter. Yeah, it's just mild motion blur because it's at 70. I'm getting used to it running at 144 Hertz. So if you want 144 Hertz in native 4K, there you go. Or we're at 120 because you can't do 144 with this. Actually, you can. No, you can't. With performance off, you go to display settings, 120 is the max you can do. You cannot go to 144, which is dumb. I don't know what the developers are thinking these days. I really don't. But basically, there's performance mode. And it does look a kind of rough around some of the trees. And I think they're going to even work on the upscaling even more. Intel has AI upscaling without hardware acceleration, without the actual AI engine. And that's why AMD cards can run Intel Xe. So I'm wondering if AMD is going to go at the AI
Seems the
route.
break hasn't taken hold too thoroughly.
But
here
this
yet.
is native 4K.
This
or
is more
4K,
than enough. Thanks.
frame generation off, performance mode. And it doesn't look absolutely horrible trash, in my opinion, compared to like FSR 2.1. Like just running around and looking around your screen, looking up at the mountains. It looks good to me. So I'm very excited for FSR 3 implementation in Starfield. And they never announced that they
I
would.
sense a hostile presence.
What do you
Be on
think
your
with
guard.
AMD's partnership they
Yeah,
would?
stay frosty. Got it.
But I'm hoping for Cyberpunk and Starfield updates to come out with some FSR 3 support, fix the bugs in 2.0 Cyberpunk, fix up Starfield real good. But back to our project. So what do? You know, you think, oh, well, I want frame generation on. Well, we're already at 120 FPS. So we were already at performance, and the settings were changed so that we were getting 120. Hey, you scared me, boy. But this is the whole idea. We wanted to get quality mode, the correct settings. I'm going to turn off the fog too. And then I'm going to just unleash on it.
Now's your chance.
On it. Yep.
Night.
But yeah, that stayed
Small
120
fry
the
are
whole
all
time.
yours.
We're still at 120 with all the motion. And that's with quality mode. So my recommendation is, if you really love 4K native, I mean, this game has it broken, but I would probably use native AA with frame gen the most. I wish this noise would stop. Oh my word, why is it doing that?
The prison here was said to be impossible to escape.
Yeah. Well, whoever started that rumor never met me.
Convinced you'd have ended up there, eh?
Catch. Good catch.
It's not much, but you never know.
Excuse me. So there you have it. So there's multiple options. You know, you can just keep frame generation off. Oh, it's up here. Frame generation off. And I was getting flickering screen for a little while there. Like a flicker. And then like even in Windows my screen was flickering. So something wasn't good there. I don't know if it's driver or Windows update. But it doesn't have anything to do with the game, I don't think. Because even after a restart and just doing Windows and reinstalling my driver, I was having flickering and stuff. Maybe my monitor's going bad. I hope not. Knock on wood. God help me. But anyways, if you want to just run native, then you have to just adjust all your settings. Whoops. Here you go. But if you want to run the game native,
magic back in New York.
you can lower some
Well,
settings.
what would you have
You'll
used
get
it for?
78 FPS.
Play game.
Yeah, Forspoken's really annoying. I can understand why people, you know, deleted their install. Them talking back and forth and she's all sassy and stuff, it's just annoying. At least it bothers me. Maybe some other people might like it, but it's irrelevant and pointless talk. Voice volume, there, just turn it off. Hey, I'll just turn everything down. There we go. But there you have it. If you're just running... Here, I hope this doesn't crash. No, I'll just do it myself. You want ultra high textures anyway. We're at 14.6 gigabytes of video memory. This is why I didn't spend 400 buy a 4080 Ti or a 4070 Ti for $800. And I got the 7900 XTX for $200 more. I didn't want low VRAM, but the texture's ultra high. What if I do standard? What VRAM will it cost? Uh-oh. It kicked me out. And you think, okay, well I'll just play 60 FPS 4K. That's good and all, but then you do a whole bunch of fire and it's gonna crash and go down to 47, 42, you know, 43. It's not good. So what we want to do is add some quality FSR. Now we're at 76 through all of this with all the settings changes. Then we can apply frame generation with Vsync on, 120 Vsync on. There we go. So instead of now dropping down to 46 or whatever, we should maintain 120 through the whole game instead of going to 46. And it's on quality FSR. And one of the biggest issues I see, especially with like Cyberpunk, is you click the ray tracing medium preset, but screen space reflections, ambient occlusion, volumetric fog and stuff like that are all cranked up to ultra, and if you turn them down you'll get like 20-30 FPS. So AMD did a video and they're like, oh well, we can do the ray trace medium settings with 7900 XTX FSR performance and we get 62 FPS. And I'm just thinking, why don't you lower some of those settings and use balanced or quality instead? And that's exactly what I'm doing here. Instead of using presets, just lower each individual setting, like Hardware in Box explains and teaches. It's really helped me. And this looks great. It feels 120. It feels so smooth. No stutter, nothing. Looks nice, sharp. Little shimmer on that tree there. And now it's gone. There was another video I saw, I think it was over here where they were looking. But they were looking at the bushes. And there was some shimmering. While standing still at least. Oh my word, they're all four in sync. But only way out in the distance do I see some shimmering along the water. Way out there, way beyond the alligators, crocodiles, whatever they are. We don't have them around here, so I don't know much about them. They're an exotic animal. We got bears and mountain lions. But yeah, this looks perfect to me. This looks perfect like 4K. I don't have any issues with the upscaling. And it's nice and smooth. But if you're like running and jumping and stuff, it feels nice. It feels like fluid motion. Ha! Yeah, so this is what I would play on if it was me. I mean, I can change a few of those settings, like the fog and stuff, but see, now I'm getting flickering. I notice when I do a lot of the frame rate stuff, I get flickering. When I open the menu, not when I'm playing though. So I don't know what's going on there. It's probably the graphics drivers need more patches, and they rushed to get it into FSR 3 and Immortals of Avium. Or at least in Forspoken, it feels rushed. Because native AA doesn't work. Plus, this is a demo. Maybe it only happens in the demo and not in the actual game. And that's okay too. Because it's just a demo. But, bottom line, I feel like AMD put pressure on them and they rushed it out. They rushed out this frame generation technological preview as well. And I think they're doing that before Christmas because people are going to get Christmas money and want to go out and buy a new graphics card. And if they didn't have frame generation at all, yeah, that's not good. So I think AMD's trying to really push this stuff out there, get it done, get it out there, and just let people start seeing and believing and be like, wow, you know, Immortals of Avium is an Unreal Engine 5 game, and I looked at it, it looks pretty good with the current implementation. So, but this is what I was saying. We're on quality presets. We're steady 120 FPS with FSR quality. What are they shooting at? And even during intense fights and flames and stuff, we're maintaining 120. There we had some 117. But I mean, it's good. A little bit of 107 for a split second. But for the most part, you're not dropping under 107, which would be roughly 53, 54 FPS. So you kind of want to lower it a little more. But that's okay. But I want to show you my settings that I just did here. Now I would keep the texture memory high because that doesn't change any FPS, I don't believe. But let's do ultra high settings and confirm. Enter. And then let's go to custom and turn on quality and frame gen. And we still are at 120 and on. But you think, wow, I'm running ultra settings. Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm getting 120 FPS. Yep. And you can do this. But you might get poor performance during fights. My fire's still heating up. Where's those alligators? Let's go fight them. Hey guys, I'm with the Fish and Game Commission. You've been fishing without a license. Come on, I need my crucible. Burn, baby, burn. He ran away like a scaredy crocodile. But look at the frame rate. 104, 90, 65, 49, 46, yeah. 60, 59, 43, 41. So this is why you gotta do your homework. That was horrible. I'm still stuttering. What the heck? It just crashed my game. I'm down to 40 FPS, so don't do that. That's bad. Don't do it. Instead, I would leave quality and on and just lower the other settings. Because they don't make a difference. Like watch out here. Look at the clouds, look at the mountains, look at the shadows. In a few seconds I'm going to press escape and you'll see the difference between ultra preset and just turning a few things down. 3, 2, 1. Did you notice a huge difference? I sure didn't. Not at all. And now during the fight, we have a lot more. We're maintaining 120. We had some 116 right there. And I saw 114 for a brief second. But see, that's the difference. I just lowered a few settings. I didn't notice any visual changes. Extremely minor, like a little bit darker shading on something. That's all I noticed. And now we're running smooth, perfect butter smooth. Smooth as silk. So that's the whole point of these settings. You know, they put these presets out and they're so dumb. Why doesn't the game ship with like, you know, optimal settings? And then just put this setting on there. If you have a 7900 XTX, you know, and optimal settings for smooth gameplay, and then you just hit the ultra preset, or the, you know, instead of ultra, low, standard, high, ultra high, they should have all of these settings, great. And then down here they should have optimal, you know, where you have the quality, you have frame generation on, and you have standard of these ray tracing off. Because there's not any difference. I mean, I'll just turn on ray tracing one more time. Look at the shadows out in the distance and around the character. Did you see a difference? I didn't. So why use it? Like, that's the whole point. It's just a joke. So here you go. You know, these are the settings I would use. Quality, on. There you go. Now I should be able to have a great smooth gameplay in fights everywhere I go, any place in the map. And if I needed to lower a few things more, I could. And if I absolutely had to, I could leave my settings the way they are and switch to balanced. So and this is what I'm hoping to do with Cyberpunk. And as soon as Cyberpunk comes out, I will be doing an optimization video. How to set it up with FSR3 to get the absolute most of it as you cruise Night City, having fun, relaxing, forgetting the stress of it all. But yeah, it feels good, and I think there's also a bug within Windows, the AMD driver, the game, or my monitor. Because I can come in here, not mess with any settings, you know, leave the game, come back, it works great, perfect. But after adjusting all of these settings in the single play session without resetting everything, that's where I have issues. And sometimes I get flickering, like right now, I have flickering and like the clouds right there when I press escape. But it's gone when I leave that. So, yep. The HDR is a little messed up too. Because I was messing with it. Now these are default settings. The correct brightness level. But yeah, this feels smooth. If I'm just running over here, I play with keyboard and controller. So sometimes when I'm actually running and gunning. Oh, these people are alive? Not for long. They've been naughty. But now let's watch the frame rate, see what happens. 102 we got there. 102. So could I drop it a little bit more? Clouds gave us some, remember? And I'm not sure about shadows. I'll keep ambient occlusion on. But let's see if that helps us at all. Yeah, now we're at 118, 114. 110 was the lowest I've seen. But that's what you want. You want it to maintain it. And the other thing is about the overhead we were talking about. And if you want to measure overhead of how much performance you have left, Vsync off 240 FPS. But don't leave it like this, it will stutter and look bad. But see, we're at the 154 target. Like in motion and fighting, we're not maintaining that 160. So we need just a little bit more performance. And I don't know, I like the fog a little bit. Turning the fog off would probably be not the best. Let's try it. I don't know, I think it might even look better without the fog. Because the way the light comes in and hits the rocks. But see, look at the frame rate. We want that frame rate to stay above 120. And for the most part it is. 115, we had 109. But for the most part, it was right around 120. So I would call it good. And if you want the fog, I don't know if it does that much for you. And I think Ancient Gameplay said turn standard. But here, I'll turn the fog on and standard detail. Here we go. Did you notice much of a difference? I didn't. The fog came, but as far as geometric quality, model detail, very little difference. And now look, we're at 160. Where's some enemies? Let's get into a huge fight. I'm gonna call it good. But I wanted to show you what I do. This is how I play. Figure things out. I'm setting it 120 and Vsync on, how it should for smooth gameplay. Quality is on. And we have standard model detail. Texture filtering and textures should always be high. If you have 16 or more gigabytes of VRAM. Yeah, now we're at 15.3 gigabytes of VRAM. 15.5. This is why I didn't buy a 4070 Ti and I was disappointed for $800. And I refuse to spend more than $1,000 on a graphics card. That's ludicrous. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to pay $800 for a 4070 Ti. No way. But see, we had 112 and 109 low right there. 113, 106. But for the most part, it stayed much better than, you know, turning off like other people were having it. And if you wanted to be certain, for 100% certain, and you want it to be 120 pegged, I would come in here and put it to balanced. And then this for sure would guarantee basically you never go under 120. And it doesn't look bad. I could play like this easily. Whereas with Cyberpunk I can't even play with ultra quality on Intel XES or quality on FSR. I just can't stand the implementation. Very shimmery. But with these settings, I should be able to fight all of these gators and have no issues at all. Unless if it's that intense, cause see we're at 105. Yeah. Let's turn motion blur off. Let's turn ambient occlusion off too. But there you have it. There you should be able to have smooth gameplay, run 120 FPS the whole game. And if you had even more problems, you could go to performance, but I don't know, the fights are generally slow. Or I mean quick. And it's okay if it drops a little bit. But you do not want to put this on quality and then crank up a whole bunch of these settings. And then it's probably best to use like standard settings. Or even just high settings. It's like Hardware Unbox said. Ultra high settings are dumb. You know, just go with high. You'll get more frame, better responsiveness. And unless if it's game changing, I mean it looks so much better on Ultra than it does high, there's no reason to use them. I mean if it does look a lot better and you want that extra graphics, then go for it. But otherwise it's much better to have smoother gameplay, faster response times with high settings. So here's the high preset, and we're going to see how the high preset runs with quality, FSR, and frame generation. Dude, I can't believe AMD has frame generation. That is so cool. Like I've been waiting ever since they talked about FSR3, I've been waiting for this. I am so happy. I'm so ecstatic hearing about, because I was an NVIDIA user for 4070, 4070 SLI, two of them, a 970, a 1070, and a 3070 Ti. That's why I was very disappointed with NVIDIA wanting $800 for a 12 gigabyte video card, not even intended for 4K gaming. They wanted $1,200. That's where I really got disappointed. I said, I'm going to go to AMD. And when I realized that they had a $1,000 graphics card that's 2% better overall in all tests according to Tech Power Up and Hardware Unboxed, 2% faster than the 4080, and it had 24 gigabytes of VRAM versus 16. And once I heard about the future promise of AMD to provide frame generation and FSR3, once I heard all that, I was like, yep, I'm going Team Red. And because Intel's 13th generation socket was a dead end, like to upgrade you need a new motherboard, I said I didn't want to do that. So I got AMD AM5 7700X. So in a year or two or three, I could just drop in a new processor. You know, drop in a new processor, and maybe 3-4 years, drop in a new graphics card. There we go. I got a 1200 watt power supply in order to be upgradable in the future. You know, if I put in a monster, 500 watt graphics card, well, that's okay. I have the power supply, so I don't have to do anything. I wanted to make it as easy as possible. And with Unreal coming out and the possibility of games using 8K, 16K textures, photorealistic assets, that's where the video memory comes in. Right now we're at 15.5 gigabytes of VRAM. That would fill up the whole entire 4080 16 gigabytes. And here's the other funny thing. With this graphics card, multiple times I had like 18, 20, 30, 18, 20 gigabytes of VRAM, and later on I found out I had 2 games running. Like I had Forspoken running and Cyberpunk running in the background or something. Alt-tabbed. And I was like 18, 22 gigabytes of VRAM. But with this card, with that much VRAM, you can do it. And it ran actually pretty good because it wasn't using the processor, it was just using the RAM. So I'm really thankful I went with AMD, and I'm really excited that FSR3 is available now. I can't believe AMD got frame generation, because I was all like, well, they have DLSS3, they have frame generation. It's like, man, should have I got a 4080? Now they have path tracing. But you know what? Even a 4090 for $1,600 can barely run. Well, it can run it. But I'm not paying $1,600 for a graphics card. I'm sorry. I'm not. There's other things in my life. I gotta deal with health and a lot of stuff. A lot of naturopathic, holistic doctors. So I'm very happy with the value and price of this graphics card. I'm going to check my stream real quick. See if anybody left any comments. Just to better be safe than sorry and check. But right now we are running quality with frame generation on, standard settings. And I'm going to see how it runs right now by setting this to 240 and turning off VSync. And like we said, we run around 160 FPS when walking around. So we're going to have a few dips here and there, but I don't think it'll be anything too bad. But we'll find out right now. We don't want it to go under 120, to be honest. Yeah, that's pretty good. So if you want a quick and easy recommendation from me, I would put 120 FPS if you have a 120 or a 144 hertz monitor, and I would put the VSync on, and then last but not least I put on high settings with a 7800 XT, 7900 XT I have, XTX. I'm tired, I gotta go. 7900 XTX. I would recommend high settings, then set it to custom, come on down here, put quality, and turn this on. And then you can leave just the rest of the settings here. You can leave all these on, and you can change it a little bit if you need more performance, but that's what I would run. The clouds I put low, because I don't notice any difference. Like if you look at the clouds at the top of the screen, they didn't change at all. And then that should be good for you. If you have to lower a few more settings or run balanced, you know, you might have to do that. Like if you're on an XT, 7900 XT, you might have to use balanced or put a few more settings down. But yeah, this feels smooth, looks good. I might need to restart the game a little bit because after changing all those settings, it does seem to have issues a little bit. But I'm gonna save the game here because I like this area. All the flowers are pretty. To end the video, I'm gonna do a little bit of walk here and then sign out. So from that encounter right there, we had a 112 and a 113 FPS for the low. So I would say these settings are good, they're playable, and I could play the whole game through this. And if I had to, I could lower a few more things or turn on balanced. I don't think I'd need performance. So it looks good. I'm very excited for Cyberpunk to get the implementation. Hopefully Starfield too. Starfield needs some love. They didn't have FSR. That's the thing. Starfield was probably like, just get it out there. It's all bugged up, you know. Just get it out there. We need to earn some money back. And it was a huge, lot of sales, I should say. But no field of view slider, no HDR support, no max frame rate limiter. Just come on. I mean, if they had a maximum frame rate limiter, they could, we could all use the AMD Fluid Motion for preview driver with the fluid motion frames on it. Set the frame rate limit and it would be perfectly smooth. But because you can't do that, it's not smooth, it's garbled, it doesn't look good. At least on my system. But yeah, this looks great. I like it. It is really smooth. And if you didn't have this, and let's say you're just doing plain native, no FSR, no upscaling, playing on 120 FPS, we'd be running 80 FPS. So this is the final test. This is it right here. We're going to use the mountains. We're going to scan them. So this is 75 FPS, 80. Okay, and then also, huge side note, all of these frames per second is going to be higher once I end the live stream, because I'm using it through my AMD graphics card. So take that into account. If I turn off live stream, I probably will be able to run the whole game 120 FPS solid even during fights. Now I'm playing the demo, but I'm just thinking ahead for different boss battles and stuff like that. But yeah, I should get even more FPS, and I'm actually going to take note of what it is once I end the stream. But we just panned around. I'm going to pan a little bit more. This is 80 FPS, 4K native. FSR and frame generation is off. Now I'm going to see if it's smoother. So let's see if it's smoother than that. Turning on quality with frame generation. Here we go. Let's try it. Yeah, it definitely feels smoother. Oh, but we have the problem. See, I can notice it. I noticed it right away. I didn't have to look. I had this at 240. You have to put that to 120 once you enable frame generation for a 144 hertz monitor or 122. So now I fixed that. That's why it stutters. Now let's see if this is better than 80. Yeah, I feel that this is better than 80. It does feel smooth. Plus, I think as they implement it even more and get the bugs out, that it's even going to improve even better. So I'm going to go back and go back to native one more time and see which is better here. I mean, native 77 looks good too, though. I don't know, it feels more blurry. Okay, that's 75 FPS. Turn this back down to 60. Turn this back up on. And now this should say 120. Maximum frame rate 120. Frame generation on. Quality FSR. And now is this any better than the 75? I think it is. Does it feel like 120 FPS? Kind of. Feels like more like 100, I guess. I'll tell you what, it doesn't feel like 77. One more time and then this will be the last. Whoops, I want VSync on. So here is 78 FPS. You want to get dizzy? I'm actually using my eyes and really trying to track it out through. Okay, that's kind of a little freaky on my highs. So let's turn on quality FSR. Turn this back down to 120. Yeah, it does feel better. I would definitely play it with it on versus off. And the only thing you could do better than this, like if you're just like, I hate FSR and frame generation, or I hate frame generation, the only other thing I could tell you is put it on performance. And now we're running 120 FPS in performance mode. Frame generation's off. So if you were running performance at 120, it'd look like this. Performance 120 FPS, frame generation off. Versus quality with frame generation on. I think I'd play with quality frame generation on. Out of all the settings I tested, I think this is the most immersive, smooth. See, there we had a 94 FPS drop. 109, 112. So there you might have to lower more settings or something. I want to check the difference. Yeah, ambient occlusion is really needed. Because watch, as soon as I press escape in 3 seconds, it's going to show ambient occlusion turned on. 1, 2, 3. See it, it darkens all the shadows better. That is one you want to use. And now let's check the frame rate. 114, 107. So 107 was the lowest we got there. So this is probably how I would play the game. Maintaining 120 FPS throughout the whole game. Plus a resetting of the game would probably help. I've had quite a few crashes with this demo and game. But that's it. I'm gonna call it. GG everybody. God bless. Have a good night.